The rain that fell on Sam the night he became homeless was not the dramatic, pounding kind. It was a cold, insistent drizzle that seeped through his thin jacket and found every gap in his resolve. He stood on the cracked sidewalk, a frayed backpack at his feet, looking at the closed door of the only home he had ever known. The argument still echoed in his ears, a toxic blend of his uncle's shouts about being a burden and his own desperate, unanswered pleas. The final words were simple and carried the weight of a law. "You are old enough now. Make your own way." The door did not slam. It shut with a soft, definitive click that was far worse. Sam was 14. The world, which had always felt small and sharp-cornered, suddenly stretched out in front of him, vast and terrifyingly empty. He had no phone, $47 saved from odd jobs, and a social worker who visited once a month and would not be back for 3 weeks. The town of Mill River, with its shuttered main street and weary faces, offered no obvious refuge. He walked for hours, his sneakers soaking through, past houses with warm, glowing windows that seemed to mock him. He spent that first night curled under the bandstand in the town park, shivering, listening to the rustle of rats and the endless patter of rain on the roof above. The next days blurred into a routine of survival. He bought the cheapest food from the grocery store, hid his backpack in different bushes, and washed his face in public restrooms. He knew he could not last. The library became his daytime sanctuary. He would read books about building things, about mechanics, about anything that felt solid and real. It was there, one afternoon, that he saw the notice on the community board, almost hidden behind flyers for lost pets and yard sales. The paper was yellowed at the edges. Tax auction. Uninhabitable structure. Parcel 7, on Elm Street. Minimum bid, $5. Sale, as is where is. Contact town clerk. A picture was paperclipped to the notice. It showed a skeletal shape, more a shadow of a house than a house itself. Its roof sagged like a tired back. Windows were dark, empty sockets. Vines clawed up its siding. But Sam did not see ruin. He saw walls. He saw a roof, however sagging. He saw a door that could, one day, close behind him on his own terms. $5. It was a sum he could risk. It was the price of a hot meal he would now forever skip. Finding the town clerk's office was easy. Walking in was harder. The woman behind the counter, Mrs. Gable, looked over her glasses at the damp, too-thin boy in front of her. "Can I help you, son?" "I want to bid on Parcel 7, Sam said, his voice barely above a whisper. He unfolded the notice and placed it on the counter, smoothing the crumpled edges with a dirty hand. Mrs. Gable's eyebrows shot up. "That old ruin on the edge of the swamp? Young man, that place is condemned. It's full of black mold, rotten floors, and probably every raccoon in the county. It's not a toy." "I'm not looking for a toy," Sam said, meeting her gaze. He pulled a $5 bill from his pocket, carefully straightened it, and placed it on top of the notice. "This is my bid." He saw the shift in her eyes. The professional dismissal softened into a confused pity, then into a dawning, horrified understanding. She looked at his worn clothes, the too large jacket, the determined set of his jaw that could not hide his youth. She was a grandmother. She knew the signs. Where are your parents?" she asked, her voice gentler. "I just want to place the bid," Sam repeated, avoiding the question. "Is there anyone else?" There was not. No one in Mill River wanted a rotten shack on a damp plot of land. The town just wanted it off their books. With a sigh that carried the weight of 1,000 town regulations she was probably breaking, Mrs. Gable processed the paperwork. She tried one more time. "You understand you own it, but you cannot live there. It is illegal. The power is cut off. The water is condemned. It is not safe." Sam just nodded, signing his name with careful letters on the line she pointed to. He was now the owner of a broken house. It was the greatest thing he had ever possessed. The walk to Elm Street felt different. He was not a stray anymore. He was a landowner, however absurd that sounded. The house sat at the dead end of the street, where the pavement gave way to weeds and then to the thick, green gloom of the Mill River swamp. Up close, it was worse than the picture. The front porch had collapsed into a hill of splintered wood. The front door hung open on one rusty hinge, revealing a cavern of darkness that smelled of damp earth and decay. Sam stepped inside, his heart pounding. The floor groaned a warning. Daylight pierced through holes in the roof, illuminating swirling dust motes and the ghostly shapes of old furniture covered in mold. In the living room, he saw the remains of a fireplace, choked with debris. He walked carefully, testing each floorboard. In the small kitchen, a rusted stove lay on its side. In a back room, he found a surprise, an old, solid-looking workbench, bolted to a part of the floor that seemed firm. It was buried under junk, but it was there. A workbench. This was his. This crumbling, terrifying, wonderful place was his. He dropped his backpack on the workbench. The sound echoed in the empty house. He had no light, no heat, no water. But he had 4 walls and a problem to solve. The first problem was tonight. He could not sleep on the dangerous floor. Using salvaged wood from the porch collapse, some rusty nails he found in a jar, and a rock as a hammer, he spent the fading daylight hours building a crude platform in the corner of the room with the workbench. It lifted him off the floor. He unrolled his sleeping bag on it. It was his bed, in his house. Mrs. Gable could not get the boy out of her mind. The look in his eyes was not that of a rebellious teen playing adventure. It was the flat, grim look of necessity. After work, she drove to Elm Street, her car bouncing on the rutted track. She saw his backpack through the broken window, saw the new wooden platform. Her heart ached. She returned to her car and opened her trunk. She came back and left a heavy box just inside the broken doorway. Sam, returning from scavenging for more usable wood, found it. Inside was a battery-powered lantern, 2 thick blankets, a first aid kit, a gallon of water, and a large box of protein bars. There was no note. He sat on his platform in the gathering dark, turning the powerful lantern on and off, watching the beam cut through the deep shadows of his house. For the first time since the door clicked shut, he did not feel entirely alone. The kindness was a different kind of warmth, one that did not fight the cold but made it feel temporary. The next morning, Sam began his real work. The house was a giant puzzle of problems, and he started with the most urgent, making it less like a sieve. Using plastic sheeting he found in an old shed, a staple gun from Mrs. Gable's second anonymous gift, and every piece of scrap wood he could find, he patched the worst of the holes in the roof from the inside. It was not pretty, but the next time it rained, only a few drips came through instead of a waterfall. He spent his days exploring his domain. He discovered an old hand pump in the backyard that, after a full day of cleaning and priming with water from his jug, yielded a gush of rusty brown liquid that slowly ran clear. It was not drinking water, but it was water for cleaning. He found tools buried in the muck, a solid hammer with a split handle, a set of screwdrivers, a saw dull with rust but still a saw. Each find was a treasure. Word began to spread in Mill River. The Wilson boy, that quiet nephew of Frank Wilson, was squatting in the old haunted house on Elm. People shook their heads. Some muttered about calling child services. Others, like old Mr. Peters from the hardware store, watched from a distance. He saw the boy come in one afternoon, count out a small pile of change, and buy a bag of lime and a heavy-duty broom. Not toys. Supplies. Curiosity got the better of Mr. Peters. One evening, he drove down Elm Street. He saw Sam in the overgrown backyard, methodically clearing weeds with a determination that seemed too old for his frame. Peters got out of his truck. "Heard you bought this place," Peters said, not unkindly. Sam straightened up, wary. "Yes, sir. What's your plan for it?" Sam looked at the house, then at the swamp behind it, then back at the old man. "To fix it." Peters chuckled, but it wasn't a mean sound. "Fix it with what?" "With what I have," Sam said simply. Peters was silent for a long moment. He had been a builder before he retired. He saw the crude but effective patches on the roof, the cleared area around the foundation. He saw the intelligence in the boy's eyes. "You're doing it wrong," Peters said finally. "Lime before you sweep kills the mold spores. And you need a mask, or you'll ruin your lungs." He went back to his truck and returned with a disposable painter's mask and a pair of worn but sturdy work gloves. "Here. These are extras." That was the second thread of connection. The next day, Peters came back with a sack of sandwiches from his wife and a manual on basic house framing. He did not offer to do the work. He just pointed at diagrams and asked Sam what he thought. Slowly, a silent mentorship began. Sam's world shrank to the boundaries of his $5 plot. His skin grew tanned, his hands calloused and nicked with cuts. He learned to identify rot, to sister a joist, to mix concrete for foundation patches. The house was still a wreck, but it was becoming his wreck. He had a system: salvage, clean, repair, reinforce. He started a pile of sorted materials: good wood, scrap metal, reusable fixtures. One afternoon, while tearing out a particularly foul section of kitchen wall, his crowbar hit something that was not wood or plaster. It was metal, and it rang with a hollow, echoing sound. He cleared the rotten lathe away, his breath catching. There, nestled between the studs, was a small, heavily rusted metal box, tucked away as if waiting. It was not a treasure chest from a storybook. It was plain and solid. Sam pried it open with trembling fingers. Inside, wrapped in oilcloth, was not gold or jewels. It was a set of exquisite, old drafting tools: compasses, rulers, a protractor, all made of brass and fine wood, and a notebook. The first page of the notebook, in elegant, faded script, read, "Plans for the future of Mill River. By Arthur C. Miller, architect. 1910. Sam sat on the dusty floor, the lantern light glinting off the brass. He opened the notebook. It was filled not with house plans, but with beautiful, intricate drawings of a town. A vibrant main street with covered walkways. A community hall by the river. A series of elegant footbridges across the swamp, turning it into a park. It was a vision of a Mill River that was beautiful, connected, and proud. A vision that had clearly never happened. Sam looked from the beautiful tools to the crumbling walls around him. He looked at the dream trapped in the notebook, and then at his own desperate, gritty dream of 4 solid walls and a dry roof. In that moment, his dream subtly changed shape. It was no longer just about shelter. It was about foundation. It was about building something that could last. He did not know how, but the seed was planted. The boy who bought a house for $5 now held the ghost of a town's forgotten hope in his hands. And for the first time, he began to wonder if maybe, just maybe, he could build both. Sam has secured his shelter, found unexpected allies, and discovered a mysterious artifact that hints at a larger purpose for both him and the town. The hook is set. What will he do with the architect's plans? How can a boy with nothing begin to rebuild not just a house, but a community's spirit? The brass compass felt heavy and alive in Sam's hand. It was not just a tool. It was a key to a different world. Under the flickering light of his battery-powered lantern, he spent the next several nights devouring Arthur C. Miller's notebook. The pages whispered of grandeur, detailed sketches of a riverside promenade where the swamp now festered, of a grand clock tower for the town square, of sturdy, beautiful workers' cottages with wide porches. Mill River in 1910 was meant to be a model town for the nearby mill workers, a place of dignity and community. But the mill had closed a decade later, and the Great Depression had scoured those dreams away, leaving only the skeleton Sam now inhabited. The plans ignited a new, quiet fire in him. His work on the house was no longer just about making it habitable. It became a study. He began to see the logic in the old framing, the intention behind the placement of the windows to catch the morning light. Arthur Miller's vision was one of harmony between structure and land. Sam started to copy the sketches in his own, rougher hand on scraps of salvaged paper, not just the buildings, but the feel of them, the spaciousness, the light, the pride. His days fell into a new rhythm. Mornings were for hard, physical work, hauling out rotten timbers, carefully denailing reusable boards, continuing his war against the mold and decay. Afternoons, often under the watchful, silent guidance of Mr. Peters, were for learning. The old man would point at a problem, a sagging beam, a crumbling section of foundation. "What do the fancy plans say about that?" Peters would grunt, a faint smile playing on his lips. Sam would scramble for his notes. "Miller says a foundation should root a house to its place, not just sit on it." "I think he meant it should be part of the land." "Poetry," Peters would mutter, but then he'd show Sam how to dig a proper footer, how to mix and pour concrete so it bonded with the old stone. The lessons were no longer just about repair. They were about rebuilding with intention. Mrs. Gable continued her quiet support. Her visits became weekly deliveries, bags of groceries that always included extra, a stack of old but clean towels, a pair of sturdy boots that miraculously fit. She asked no probing questions, but her eyes missed nothing. She saw the new, careful patching on the roof, the cleared path to the hand pump, and the growing pile of sorted lumber. She also saw the architect's notebook, now kept respectfully on Sam's workbench. "That's Arthur Miller's work," she said one day, her voice hushed with surprise as she ran a finger over the embossed cover. "My grandfather mentioned him. They called him a dreamer. The town council thought his ideas were too expensive." "They were wrong," Sam said quietly, with a certainty that surprised them both. The real turning point came with the porch. The front of the house was a scar, a gaping wound where the old porch had fallen in. It was the first thing anyone would see. According to Miller's notebook, the porch was not just an add-on, it was the welcoming hand of the house. Sam decided to rebuild it, not as it was, but as Miller might have envisioned it, wider, with sturdy columns and a deep overhang to shelter a visitor from the rain. He had no money for new timber. But he had his growing salvage pile and the endless supply of deadfall and reclaimable wood from the swamp's edge. For 2 weeks, he labored. He used the old solid workbench as a sawhorse, painstakingly measuring and cutting with his handsaw. Mr. Peters brought him a bucket of proper exterior wood glue and a handful of clamps. "For the joints," he said. "Make them strong." Sam's porch rose slowly, a little crooked at first, then finding its level. He used the brass protractor from the box to check his angles, his tongue poking out in concentration. He was smoothing the floorboards with a hand plane when a voice interrupted the rhythm of his work. "That's a mighty fine effort for a condemned property." Sam looked up. A man in a crisp collared shirt and slacks stood on the weed-choked path, a clipboard in his hand. It was Mr. Burrows, the town's code enforcement officer. His expression was not unkind, but it was official. The bubble of Sam's world threatened to pop. "Thank you," Sam said, standing up and wiping his hands on his pants. "I've had reports," Burrows began, glancing at the house with a practiced eye. "A minor living here without utilities, without a guardian. This is a serious violation, son. I'm afraid I'm going to have to issue an order to vacate. This place is unsafe." A cold dread, sharper than any winter wind, seized Sam's chest. This was it. The law he couldn't argue with. The end of his dream before it had even properly begun. He looked at his porch, at the house that was slowly healing under his hands. He thought of the notebook, of the welcoming hand. "It's safer now than it was," Sam said, his voice strained but clear. "The roof leaks less. The floor is braced. I have a water source and a way to handle sanitation. I'm not just living here. I'm fixing it." "That's not the point," Burrows started. "What is the point?" The new voice was firm. Mrs. Gable had appeared, walking briskly from where she had parked her car out of sight. She held a thermos and a paper bag, but her posture was that of a defender. "The point is a child has shelter and is taking more responsibility for this town's blighted property than the town has in 20 years. Look at this porch, Carl." Burrows was taken aback. "Martha, you know the regulations. He's 14. He can't be here alone. Social services." "Social services would put him in a group home 3 towns over," Mrs. Gable interrupted, her voice softening. "Is that better than this?" Look at what he's done. Really look. Mr. Burrows sighed, rubbing his temple. He did look. He saw the meticulous patching, the cleared yard, the new, solid-looking porch frame. He saw the neat stack of firewood, the swept steps, the clean windows Sam had painstakingly scrubbed. He saw the intelligence and desperate care in every detail. It was the opposite of a squatter's den. It was the workshop of a young, obsessed craftsman. The power is off. The water's not certified, Burrows stated, but the rigidity was gone from his voice. I use the hand pump. I have lanterns, Sam offered quietly. And I bring him a hot meal most days, Mrs. Gable added. He's not abandoned, Carl. He's independently housed with community oversight. A long silence stretched out, filled only by the buzz of insects from the swamp. Mr. Burrows made a few notes on his clipboard. He looked from the determined boy to the resolved town clerk to the house that was, against all odds, beginning to look cared for. I can't officially approve this, he said finally. But I can classify my visit as an initial inspection with a long-term compliance timeline. He fixed Sam with a stern look. There will be rules. No open flames inside except in that fireplace once I've inspected the chimney. You keep this place clean and safe. If I see one hint of real danger, structural collapse, fire hazard, unsanitary conditions, this ends immediately. And we will be having a conversation with social services about a more permanent, legal guardianship arrangement. Understood. Relief flooded through Sam so powerfully his knees felt weak. Yes, sir. Understood. And that porch, Burrows added, a hint of something almost like admiration in his eyes. The railing needs to be 42 inches high, not 38. Fix it. He gave a curt nod to Mrs. Gable and walked back to his car. It was not a victory, but it was a stay of execution. Sam had bought time. That night, sitting on his finished porch, with a railing now exactly 42 inches high, eating the stew Mrs. Gable had brought, he felt a new sense of solidity. He had faced the system and, with help, had not been crushed by it. The house was now, in a gray, unofficial way, his. The incident, however, sent ripples through Mill River. The story of the code officer being seen at the Wilson kids' shack spread. Some people tooted about liability, but others were intrigued. A few days later, a pickup truck rattled down Elm Street. Leo, the owner of the struggling auto garage, got out. He had a surly expression but curious eyes. Heard you're good with your hands, Leo said without preamble. I got an old storage shed out back of the garage. Roof's about to cave in. I'll pay you $50 and all the scrap metal you can pull out of it to tear it down clean. You interested? It was Sam's first job offer. A real one. He took it. Over the next week, after his own daily chores, he went to Leo's garage. He dismantled the shed with the same care he used on his own house, saving every reusable board and strip of metal. Leo, impressed, paid him the $50 and threw in an old but functional battery charger for his lanterns. More importantly, word of Sam's careful, honest work spread. Another offer came. Ms. Rita, who ran the Tired Diner on Main Street, asked if he could rebuild her wobbly outdoor seating bench. She paid him in hot meals for a week. With each small job, Sam earned a few dollars and a little more respect. He began to see the town not just as a backdrop, but as a network of needs and skills. He noticed things now, the peeling paint on the library's trim, the cracked steps at the post office, the forlorn, empty lot where kids used to play. He started carrying Arthur Miller's notebook with him in his backpack. During breaks, he would take it out and compare the grand vision to the faded reality. One afternoon, sitting on the newly sturdy diner bench, he had a simple, powerful idea. Miller's plans were too big, too overwhelming for one boy or even one town council. But what about one small piece? What about a single, welcoming hand? He looked at the diner's bare, flat front. Then he looked at a sketch in the notebook of a shop front with a simple, slanted roof overhang to shield customers from rain and sun. It was not a clock tower or a promenade. It was a small, practical piece of beauty. That evening, He showed the sketch to Ms. Rita. "If I can find the materials," he said, his voice tentative, "would you let me build this for your diner? A proper cover for your door? I think it would make people want to stop more." Rita looked from the elegant sketch to the boy's earnest, grease-smudged face. She saw not a charity case, but a visionary. "You find the materials, Sam," she said, "and you've got a deal." Sam had found his first real project. He wasn't just rebuilding a house anymore. He was starting, one small piece of wood and one act of belief at a time, to rebuild the heart of Mill River itself. The boy who needed a home was now quietly figuring out how to build one for his entire town. Sam has secured a fragile truce with authority, earned his first income, and gained a foothold of respect in the community. His dream is expanding from personal survival to communal restoration, starting with a simple awning for the diner. The hook deepens. Can he translate the architect's century-old vision into tangible change? Will the town embrace this strange boy and his dreams? The diner's awning project became Sam's secret blueprint for something larger than himself. He scoured his salvage piles, the swamp's edge, and even the town dump, a place others saw as an end, but he saw as a treasure trove. He found long, straight pine boards from a discarded bed frame. He pulled rusted but solid corrugated metal sheets from an old chicken coop. Every nail he straightened was a penny saved, every piece of sanded wood a step closer. Mr. Peters became his unofficial project manager. He would arrive at the diner on his morning walk, sip a coffee, and watch Sam work. His advice was sparing but critical. "Support post goes there, not there. Wind will catch it otherwise." Or, "Angle that roof a touch more. Snow slides off better." He brought Sam a bag of proper galvanized screws. "Nails will work loose. Use these." Word traveled fast in a small town. People coming for their morning coffee would pause to watch the boy with the intense focus working on Ms. Rita's frontage. Leo from the garage stopped by, left a can of dark green paint that was just taking up space. An older woman named Helen, who lived above the diner, brought down a basket of sandwiches and a thermos of lemonade one hot afternoon. "For the builder," she said with a wink. The work was slow and methodical. Sam measured 3 times for every cut. He used Arthur Miller's brass tools to ensure his angles were perfect. He wasn't just building a cover, he was building a testament to the idea that Mill River deserved better than decay. As the frame went up, then the metal roof, then the neat trim, something shifted in the atmosphere of the tired street. The structure was simple, but it was solid. It was intentional. It had a dignity the sagging building behind it had long lost. The day Sam applied the final coat of Leo's green paint, a small crowd gathered. Ms. Rita came out, her hands on her hips. She looked at the awning, then at the freshly painted bench below it, then at the boy standing there, paint in his hair and hope in his eyes. Without a word, she went inside and came back with a hand-painted sign on cardboard. She hung it on the new post. It read, "Under new management of the front porch." People laughed. And then they clapped. A real, spontaneous round of applause echoed on Main Street. Sam's face flushed a deep red, but he stood a little taller. Mr. Peters, from the back of the crowd, gave a single, firm nod. That awning was more than wood and metal. It was a signal. The town that had slowly been looking away from itself began to glance back, and it saw not just a repaired awning, but a possibility. The project changed everything for Sam. He was no longer just the Wilson kid squatting in the ruin. He was the young builder. Offers for small jobs trickled in with more consistency. He fixed fences, repaired porch steps, built a new set of shelves for the library. He charged little, often accepting food or tools as payment. His own house fund grew slowly, but his reputation grew fast. He used his earnings to make 2 big purchases from the hardware store, a second-hand but functional cordless drill and a bulk box of weatherproofing sealant. The drill transformed his work speed. The sealant was for his own house, the final barrier against the relentless damp. With each sealed seam, each repaired window frame, the broken house on Elm Street grew drier, warmer, more like a home. He even managed to rig a simple rainwater collection system from the now secure roof into a series of cleaned barrels, solving his non-potable water needs. One evening, Mrs. Gable arrived with a casserole and a folder. "It's not official," she said, her voice low. "But Carl Burroughs and I had a talk with a friend at Family Services. Given your unique circumstances and demonstrated responsibility, we've drawn up a proposal for a special youth emancipation support arrangement. It's a fancy term. It means if you can prove you can support yourself, maintain safe housing and stay in school, the state might allow you to remain as you are, with me as your listed community advocate." She placed the folder on his workbench. "It requires a plan. A real one." Sam opened the folder. It was filled with forms and requirements. A budget. Proof of income. A safety inspection of the property. School enrollment records. It was a mountain of paperwork, but it was a mountain with a path to the summit. Legal, recognized independence. School. Sam asked, the word feeling strange in his mouth. He hadn't set foot in one since before his uncle kicked him out. "Correspondence courses," Mrs. Gable said. "Online. The library has computers. You work at your own pace. It's the only way it works with your job." She said the word job with a pride that made Sam's chest tighten. This was the new challenge. Not survival, but legitimacy. The house needed to pass a real inspection. He needed a steady income stream. He needed to become a real business. Inspired by the diner's success, Sam looked at Arthur Miller's notebook with new eyes. He flipped past the grand promenades and focused on the small elements, the designs for benches, for street lamp bases, for planter boxes. He started sketching his own versions, adapted for simple construction with reclaimed materials. He showed them to Mr. Peters. "You want to be a street vendor now?" Peters grumbled, but he was looking at the clean lines of the bench design. "I want to sell these to people," Sam said. "To fix up their own places. To make the street look better." Peters was quiet for a long time. "You got one prototype. The diner bench. It's good. But you need a showcase. You need people to see what you can do, not just hear about it." The idea came to Sam that night. The town park, where he had spent his first terrible night under the bandstand, was a sad place. The grass was patchy, the single bench was broken, and the old bandstand itself was peeling and forlorn. What if he fixed it? Not for money, but as a demonstration. A gift to the town that was, in its own awkward way, starting to accept him. The next day, he went to the town council's open meeting. He stood at the back, his heart hammering against his ribs. When they asked for public comments, he walked to the front. The eyes of the mayor and 4 council members felt heavier than any load of lumber. "My name is Sam," he began, his voice thin in the large room. "I live on Elm Street. I want to fix the bandstand in the park. The roof and the bench. At no cost to the town. I just need permission and maybe to borrow a ladder from the fire department." The council members looked at each other, bewildered. The mayor, a kind-faced man named George, leaned forward. "Son, that's a big job. And the town has no budget for materials." "I have the materials," Sam said. He pulled out his sketches, based on Miller's designs for a graceful, open-sided pavilion. "I'll use reclaimed wood. I just want to do it." An older councilwoman, Evelyn, who remembered Arthur Miller, peered at the sketches. "Those lines, they look familiar," she murmured. She looked at Sam with new interest. "Why would you do this?" Sam met her gaze. "Because it's the right thing to do for the park. And because I can." Permission was granted. With a long list of liability waivers Mrs. Gable helped him navigate. The loan of the ladder was approved. The park project became the talk of the town. People on their evening walks would stop and watch. Sam worked there every afternoon after his paid jobs. He repaired the bandstand's structural bones, replaced the rotten floorboards with tight, smooth planks from an old barn he'd been given permission to dismantle. He rebuilt the broken bench, then built a second one to match, placing them facing the bandstand. He didn't work alone for long. Leo showed up one Saturday with his teenage son, Tom, who was more interested in his phone than anything else. "He's going to learn what work is," Leo said, handing the boy a pair of work gloves. Tom, sulking at first, was put to work sanding. By the end of the day, his sulk had turned to a focused frown of concentration. Helen from the diner organized a painting party. A few neighbors came, brushes in hand, and helped Sam apply a fresh coat of white paint to the bandstand, laughing and chatting as they worked. The transformation was magical. The white bandstand gleamed under the summer sun. The two new, sturdy benches invited people to sit. Sam had even used scrap copper to fabricate a simple weather vane for the peak, a soaring bird shape from one of Miller's sketches. On the day he finished, wiping sweat from his brow, he saw two elderly men sitting on one bench, playing chess on a small board between them. A mother pushed a stroller past and smiled at him. The park was no longer a place to avoid, it was a place to be. That evening, as Sam packed his tools, Mayor George approached him. He held out an envelope. "The town council voted," he said. "It's a small grant from the Community Beautification Fund. It's not payment. It's a seed fund for your next project or for your business." Sam opened the envelope. Inside was a check for $500. It was an unimaginable sum. It was belief made official. "There's a condition," the mayor said, his eyes twinkling. "You have to let the high school shop class come see your house sometime. Their teacher thinks you could teach them a thing or two about real-world building." Sam agreed, stunned. He walked back to Elm Street in the twilight, the check a burning rectangle in his pocket. He stood on his own porch, looking at his house. It was no longer a broken thing. It was a workshop, a headquarters, a home. The roof was straight. The windows were clean. Light from his lanterns glowed warmly behind them. He had set out to build a shelter and had instead built a place for himself in the world. He had a legal path forward, a growing trade, and the respect of his community. But as he looked at Arthur Miller's notebook, now open on his own properly built kitchen table, he knew the biggest build was just beginning. The town had given him a chance. Now, he felt the weight of the responsibility to give it a future. The promenade, the riverwalk, the clock tower, they were no longer just pretty drawings. They were a promise he intended to keep. One piece of salvaged wood, one act of shared belief at a time. Sam has transformed from a hidden squatter to a recognized, valued member of the community. He has legal hope, a seed fund, and a proven ability to inspire others to action. The hook turns towards the future. How will Sam use his seed fund? Can a teenage builder truly rally a whole town to resurrect a century-old dream? The stage is set for the final, transformative climax. The $500 check was not money to Sam. It was a covenant. He framed it, not on a wall, but in his mind as a contract with Mill River. He would not spend it on himself. He opened a proper bank account with Mrs. Gable's help, depositing the grant and his slowly accumulating earnings. He called it the Mill River Build Fund. The first purchase from it was not lumber or tools, but a domain name and a basic website, built on the library's computer with the help of Tom, Leo's now keen son. The site was simple: Mill River Restoration, rebuilding our town, one project at a time. It featured before and after photos of the diner awning and the park bandstand, Sam's sketches based on Arthur Miller's plans, and a clear statement: skilled salvage work and community carpentry. Let's build something beautiful together. The website did something unexpected. It caught the eye of a reporter from the regional newspaper doing a story on small-town revitalization. A week later, a woman with a notebook and a camera was walking down Elm Street. The article, titled "The Boy Who's Building a Town's Future," was not just about Sam. It was about Arthur Miller's lost plans, about Mrs. Gable's quiet support, about Mr. Peters's gruff mentorship, about the painting party at the park. It painted a picture not of a lone genius, but of a community reawakening. The article ended with a question: what forgotten dream might your town have buried? The effect was electric. Emails poured into the website. Not just job offers, but messages from former residents, moved by the story. Small donations trickled into the build fund from people who wanted to be part of the change, even from afar. A history professor from the state university wrote, offering his students help to digitally archive Miller's notebook. But the most important response came from within Mill River itself. A town hall meeting was called. The agenda, the Miller plans, a discussion. The room was packed. Sam sat in the front row between Mrs. Gable and Mr. Peters, his notebook on his lap. Mayor George stood up. "For years," he began, "we've talked about what's wrong with Mill River. Empty storefronts. No jobs for our young people. A riverfront we treat like a back alley. Maybe it's time we started talking about what could be right." He nodded to Sam. Sam's legs felt like water as he walked to the podium. He opened Miller's notebook to a specific page, and with the help of Tom and a borrowed projector, an image flashed on the wall. It was not the grand clock tower. It was Miller's drawing of the Riverwalk, a simple, graceful path along the swampy edge of the Mill River, with wooden boardwalks over the wetter sections, benches looking out at the water, and native plants lining the way. It was practical. It was achievable. "This isn't about building a castle," Sam said, his voice gaining strength as he spoke. "This is about building a place to walk. A place to sit and look at the water. Right now, that land is just mud and weeds. But it could be our park. Our place. We don't need millions. We have the land. We have the plan." He then showed his own, updated sketches. "We can use reclaimed wood from the old mill factory foundations. We can volunteer the labor. The build fund can pay for hardware and concrete. We can start with just 200 feet. A beginning." He was met with silence at first. Then, a businessman named David, who owned a vacant lot on Main Street, stood. "I've been sitting on that property waiting for a miracle. Maybe the miracle isn't a big chain store. Maybe it's a nice view. I'll donate the lumber from the old warehouse on my lot. It's good heart pine." Then Ms. Rita stood. "The diner will feed volunteers on work days." Leo stood. "My crew and I will help with the heavy lifting." One by one, hands went up. Offers of time, materials, expertise. A retired engineer offered to survey the land. A gardener offered native plants from her nursery. It was no longer Sam's project. It was Mill River's project. The first 200 feet campaign began the following Saturday. It felt like a festival. Dozens of people, from teenagers to retirees, showed up at the swampy river edge. Sam, with Mr. Peters at his side, was the foreman. They marked the path. They dug post holes. They mixed concrete. The donated heart pine, rough but incredibly strong, was cut and planed. The first section of boardwalk, resting on sturdy posts, began to take shape over the muck. It was slow, messy work. People got muddy. They laughed. They shared stories. For the first time in decades, people were not just living in Mill River, they were building it together. Sam's own life was transforming in parallel. With the town's collective endorsement, the special youth emancipation support paperwork sailed through. He was legally recognized as an emancipated minor, with Mrs. Gable as his official advocate. He worked on his correspondence courses at the library in the early mornings. His business, now officially Sam's Restoration, had a waiting list. He hired Tom for small jobs, paying him a fair wage. The broken house was now a showroom. He had installed a small, safe wood stove in the fireplace Mr. Burroughs had approved. He had a proper bed, a bookshelf filled with building manuals and Miller's now digitized plans, and a real sense of peace. The Riverwalk grew, foot by foot, weekend by weekend. As the boardwalk left the swampy ground and reached a drier, shaded area under old trees, Sam directed the building of the first bench, an exact replica of Miller's design. They placed it looking out at a bend in the river, where the water ran clear. The day they finished that bench, an elderly woman named Evelyn, the councilwoman who remembered Miller, was the first to sit on it. She just sat, looking at the water, tears silently tracing lines down her cheeks. "He would be so proud," was all she said. The project did the impossible. It changed how people saw their town. The river was no longer a soggy problem at the town's back. It was an asset. The path, though short, became a popular evening stroll. People started talking about the next 200 feet. They talked about cleaning the river itself. They talked about the empty storefronts on Main Street and how they could be made inviting, perhaps with awnings or flower boxes. The spark Sam had struck was now a steady flame. One crisp autumn day, nearly 2 years after he had bought the house for $5, Mayor George and the full town council came to Elm Street. They gathered on Sam's porch, now adorned with planters overflowing with late blooms. George cleared his throat. "Sam," he said formally, but with a warm smile. "The town council has voted unanimously to create a new official position, Town Restoration Coordinator. It's a part-time job, with a salary from the community fund. The job is to oversee projects like the Riverwalk, to help residents with historical renovations, and to be the keeper of Arthur Miller's vision. We can't think of anyone more qualified. The job comes with one condition." Sam waited, his heart thudding. George gestured to the house. "This property is hereby removed from the condemned list. We'd like to officially rezone it as a live-work historical restoration property. It's your home, and it's also the first officially recognized project of the new Mill River." It was more than he had ever dreamed. A job. A purpose. A home that was recognized and valued. He accepted, not with a grand speech, but with a simple, heartfelt thank you. That night, Sam sat on his porch, looking not at the swamp, but at the soft lights of the town glowing in the distance. He could hear faint laughter from the direction of the Riverwalk. In his hands, he held the old, brass compass from the metal box. He thought of the scared, cold boy under the bandstand. He thought of the $5 bill on the town clerk's counter. He thought of every cut, every nail, every act of kindness that had brought him here. He was not just a boy who had fixed a house. He was a catalyst. He had shown a town that its future wasn't something that happened to it. It was something it could build, with its own hands, from its own history, and with its own heart. The broken house had become a home. The forgotten plans had become a pathway. And the boy with nothing but a dream had helped a whole town remember how to dream again. The story of Sam and Mill River was no longer about survival. It was about legacy. And it was just beginning. Sam's journey comes full circle, achieving legal standing, purpose, and the profound fulfillment of uniting a community around a shared dream. The broken house is now a historic cornerstone, and the town is on a new path, rebuilt not just in wood and stone, but in spirit and connection. The ultimate hook is the enduring power of one person's determination to spark collective transformation.